Right. Okay. And so the name of the organisation as well, is it Leeds Skit? Is it Leeds School for Initial Teacher Training? Is that
Yes,
the
it's
proper
yeah,
title?
Leeds Skit. Yeah, Leeds Skit, Leeds School Initial Teacher Training. So we're a secondary provision. We've been around since 2004,
Yep.
and we train secondary school trainees for secondary school teaching across a plethora of subjects.
Excellent. So, how would you say your management of those trainee teachers differs from, say, a management within a school in a typical staff review?
Right, so in terms of training, it's very intensive, as is any teacher training course. The course begins in September and it runs until June. And a lot of our assessment now in teacher training is very much about formative assessment. And SchoolIP has been really helpful to support mentors and all of the SCIT team in supporting our trainees. So we don't really look at summative assessment until the end of the training course, and that's where we assess our trainee teachers against the teacher standards, and they would be granted QTS. So in the short term, to support them in their learning journey and their training journey, SchoolIP has been invaluable in terms of target setting. So on our SchoolIP system, our trainees will meet with their mentors on a weekly basis. And against our curriculum, SchoolIP has allowed us to set targets against our curriculum areas. So trainees have the opportunity, with all the evidence that they're collecting, and that's saved on the evidence platform of SchoolIP. So they collate evidence to support them in their day jobs in terms of like lesson planning, assessing, marking and feedback of their pupils' work, and all of that evidence is collated onto SchoolIP. And then from that evidence, the mentors, trainees and everyone involved in their training can actually access that evidence, and they can set targets against our 6 curriculum areas, and they're SMART targets. And those targets are shared with all of the colleagues that work with our trainee teachers, and they're reviewed on a weekly basis, and it informs our trainees and the mentors that work with them the areas that they have strengths with, and then the areas that they need to improve on.
That's great. Sounds like it's quite intensive, this process, and it seems like there's a lot of evidence involved for the trainees in terms of gathering that evidence on a weekly basis.
Yes, there is a lot of evidence, and again, SchoolIP have been really helpful in this area. We try to streamline the evidence in terms of workload for our trainee teachers, but it really does depend on our trainees labelling their evidence correctly. And with any new system, we have had challenges with this, but we've always been able to count on SchoolIP to support all of the SCIT team in supporting our trainees in labelling their evidence correctly. So it makes it really easy for trainees to be able to access any good practice and share that with the members of the SCIT team, and really support them in making that progress and looking at areas that they need to improve on.
That's brilliant that we've been able to support you with that. So, how did you first learn about School IP? Where did you hear about us?
I think it was from you, actually. I think we got an email from yourselves, and really good timing, because we were looking for an online platform or something that could support us with collating evidence and support our trainees in terms of target setting. And I think you actually came in and you spoke with myself and colleagues from the team, and you were really helpful. And then we agreed to go with SchoolIP, and then from there we've had online support, we've had face-to-face support, which has been really useful.
Excellent. So, how did you get started with School IP, and can you describe, how your use of School IP has progressed from sort of the initial startup?
Yeah, we've been with SchoolIP for quite a few years now. And again, it's very much talking to your colleagues, having that insight in terms of how we could put this together. I had a vague idea of what I wanted, and it was at the start, it was very much about a platform to upload evidence. But obviously, as the teacher training has changed greatly, we need to ensure that we have something that allows us to formatively assess our trainees, and speaking to your colleagues about how we could do that has been invaluable. So it was very simple at the start, it was very much about just collating evidence, but now it's really moved forward in terms of target setting, allowing lots of different stakeholders within the SCIT to be able to look at evidence and support trainees in their trainee journey. So it really has just moved on from there.
That's brilliant, and I'm pleased that we've been able to support you with that. Um, what do your staff think about School IP?
With any system, it does take a while to get used to that system, but any staff that I've spoken to have always been really positive about SchoolIP. If there's any areas that go wrong, if they don't understand something, there's always a customer helpline that we can contact, which has been really useful. And again, there's always somebody at the end of the phone or the end of an email that can get back to us straight away. And lots of the schools that we use anyway have started to use SchoolIP for their own performance management purposes. So again, it's very user-friendly, a very intuitive system.
Excellent. So, what difference would you say overall that SchoolIP has made to your organisation?
It's allowed us to get away from paper. It's allowed us to get away from any excuses where people can lose evidence, because the evidence can be on that platform. And again, it's allowed that evidence to be accessible, and it's been invaluable again over COVID, where we've had to work in a different way. And people have been able to share evidence very easily, be able to access evidence very easily, and be able to have meetings like we're having now, to be able to support that trainee and still and allow them to still make progress.
And one final question. Do you think that SchoolIP is good value for money, and would you recommend it to other teacher training providers?
I think SchoolIP is very much good value for money. As I said, it's really supported the trainees, it's supported myself and our colleagues. And as I said, the customer service is second to none. You always get that support when you require it and when you request it. So yes, very happy with the service.
Thank you very much for your feedback there, Sinead. It's really very much appreciated.
That's great. Thank you.